Good morning. What is... Yeah. Vincent, is something not working? Because I think it's working. I could be wrong. What is the title? You don't know how... Okay, so when I'm streaming on my channel, it's so easy, it's so simple. I mean, I've been doing it the same way for 4 years. Now that I'm on IPL, there's a whole lot of different factors that go into it. It's a collaborative channel versus your own channel, and things are a little bit different. It sucks because I'm the least tech savvy person within IPL. Like, the YouTube isn't live. It says it's upcoming. There's one person waiting to watch it on YouTube. Oh my gosh. I think I see what I did wrong though. Okay. Now that's what we're looking for. Alright, hello! Keon, Lepus, Epic Pikachu, you came over to the right plot. You found us. Hello, Zai. I did pronounce... I know I asked in the Low Ink pre-show if I pronounced that correctly, but then I forgot. Yeah, the hell with YouTube. Catch the VOD later. Z. Why don't you just call yourself Z? I don't remember that though. How'd your I don't know the name of your tournament, but I know the premise of your tournament. How did that go? It was on Thursday, right? Zed? It's not pronounced Zed. There's no way it'd be pronounced that. Kills in YouTube. Man, even in mod view you see the ads? You can't even moderate the stream until you get through ads. What is up with that? So hello Skep, Camo. Went really well. 12 teams with 1 day notice, like 0 promotion. That's honestly 12 teams in this day and age is pretty good. I think your tournament's got the right idea. And I said this a couple of weeks ago, like I have no idea why nobody's tried just a like a just above low ink skill cap tournament. Not that I'm advocating for more tournaments. I'm just kind of surprised that hasn't been tried yet. Nine Div 5 cap tournaments? Why? I would assume the reason there's Div 5 cap tournaments is because people want to do... Okay, so when you get into TOing, most of the time it's somebody who's banned from low ink, or somebody who's like grew up playing in low ink and they don't play the game anymore and they want to start TOing. So what they would do instead of just an open tournament, it's more natural for them to stick into the area that they've been growing up in or they stop playing in or whatever, and they're just like, okay, I'm going to make a new Div 5 tournament because that's what I know. And like, so be it. But I don't know, that's another thing where it's like, why just because low ink does Div 5 doesn't mean everyone else has to do it. You can do whatever. But like Div caps at this point makes no sense either, because like, what is Div 5 right now? What is Div 1 right now? Like, nobody knows what any of these divs are. That was June when those came out. So you need, if you're going to do a skill cap tournament, you have to have a really good verification staff that knows what your line is and can consistently determine who has gone over and under whatever your line is. Like, yeah, you can put in your rules, div whatever, but like your staff has to all be on the same wavelength of what that div means, even though you can't just look, oh, well, they were div this 4 months ago, so that means that number's going to stick with them until the next Ludi divs come out. And it's like, that's not how that works. It's not how low ink works. Yes, we say div 5, but I mean, you look at the teams that are like playing and winning in low ink, they were all like div 6 and below. I wouldn't know where Goober Dash was, but most of the teams that are like legit div 5 have already been banned. The vast majority of them. Accumulation of results. Really, yeah. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or VOD, Twitch or YouTube, while you are putting together your last-minute Halloween costume, waiting in line to vote early in your state, being confused as to what tourney this is that is currently being streamed on the IPL channel. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. Hey, look at this. The Popcast episode number 251 now being streamed live on Twitch through IPL. Next week it'll be live on YouTube as well. I'm figuring some stuff out. I'm old and not very tech savvy, although I do work for an organization called Inkling Productions is in it. Dapple Productions as well. That's how you know you're a big org. You have the word production in your name. Actually, it's Performance Labs, but it should be production. It looks the same. New channel, but this is still my spare bedroom. I mean, there's still stuffle back there. Nothing's really changed as far as this is concerned, but now we are giving views to a channel that can, that the idea is to help grow this channel, help get some more streams out here, and eventually evolve in more of you, more idiots in chat taking place in this thing. However, not right now, because we got a pretty much a packed episode today. Before we get into things, though, it is Halloween week. Traditionally, well, not traditionally, it depends on if I feel like it. I'll dress up for the Halloween episode of the Popcast. This time, being the first episode on IPL, I did not think it appropriate to dress up for Halloween. Although, I will say this. It is something that has been on my mind for a while. And now that I have a kid who's not old enough to be trick-or-treating, but eventually will be old enough to be trick-or-treating, Halloween is by far my least favorite holiday. It's such a scam. I mean, set aside the fact that this outdoor themed holiday is taking place at the very end of a fall month where it's traditionally cold outside, especially in the Midwest. The actual part of Halloween is a scam. Think about it. Let's say you spend 10, 11 years of your life, and that's when you're getting into being a teenager, and it's kind of weird that you are doing trick-or-treating, right? Where you're going door to door and you're collecting candy from everybody in the neighborhood for about 10 to 11 years. Okay, but when you get older, it is expected that you are the person who's giving out candy. So while I am bringing in, I'm taking in income for about 11 years, I'm handing out candy for like 50 plus years until the rest of my life, until I'm in a nursing home. And even in nursing home, I bet they do some like trick-or-treating just so like, oh, it's so cute, these kids are coming to my door. So if I'm giving out candy for 50 plus years, but I'm only taking in candy for like 11, that means by participating in Halloween, I am operating at a net loss for candy. I'm operating in the red, and so is everybody else. Literally everyone who participates in Halloween over the course of their life is operating in the red as far as how much candy they are bringing in. So who is benefiting from Halloween? The top 1% of children, that's who. Halloween is a scam. And I stand by that. News of tournaments may be of interest to the casual listener of the podcast. We have Minnow Cup coming up this upcoming weekend. Is going to be the Tower Control edition that is going to be taking place on Saturday at 1 o'clock. Also, the Glaze Gauntlet. For some reason, Kyo's Glaze Gauntlet tournament has not been announced 48 hours before the tournament actually starts. This tournament is already up with at least 6 days of notice, maybe longer. There's going to be a Glaze Gauntlet on Sunday, and I bet they're going to get more people to sign up for it, rather than they just randomly decide to pull it out of their ass and just, hey, what's going on Saturday? Don't care. We're going to run a Kyo tournament right over anything else that's going on. It's like, but now it's been announced ahead of time, so we'll see how that goes. Minnow Cup Saturday, Glaze Gauntlet on Sunday. Today we're going to be talking with Magic8Ball, who, if you are not on Blue Sky and you're on Twitter, you're going, who? Who's that? Well, you're going to find out. Magic's got a lot of good takes, a lot of interesting takes. I don't want to use the word hot takes because I feel like that's very clickbaity, but this is going to be a good conversation. You're going to be happy you tuned in live to see this one, because it's going to be some good stuff there. So all that and more. But first, so Magic, if you're listening to this while you're getting your webcam set up in the chat, and I will join you momentarily, I do want to give a quick update on the CCA. I'm not doing a full weekly recap today, but if I could find where I did this one here. I have always talked about how the CCA is probably the best story going on in competitive Splatoon right now, and nobody, myself included, is talking about it. So I'm going to try to make a concerted effort on a weekly basis, especially when the information is hand-fed to me by the CCA themselves. I want to at least acknowledge it. So a very brief mini weekly recap, just CCA focused. The CCA Circuit Qualifier number 3 occurred this past Friday with 90 collegiate teams competing the night after their classes had finished. It took place on Friday. In Division 1, VCU, the Big Fat Sea Cows, took home the first place. George Mason University took second, and Central Florida took home third. Shoutouts to Haya, taking home third place for the team. They got the 16th seed in the top 32. Commentated Division 1 with Saf. Div 2 was won by Townsend University, the Tigerfish. Div 3 was won by the University of Maryland College Park, the Table Terp Troop. And Division 4 was also won by VCU, the Shadow Warriors. VCU having two different teams, both winning Division 1 and Division 4. Also an announcement. The CCA's ongoing stat project has been fully updated to include matches from the CCA Circuit Qualifier number 3. If you're curious about the collection process or want to see 125 interactive visuals for yourself, check out the website right here. I'll put the link in chat. And oh my goodness, we were taking a look at this live while me and Saf were commentating this. This thing is bonkers. This thing literally gives you a breakdown of every team's like analytics. Like if you're somebody who's big on baseball analytics, this is literally that for competitive Splatoon, at least as far as the college is concerned. Like you can pull up a team, you can see like their history against the other team. You can see who's likely to win on what specific mode if they play each other. It's pretty like in-depth stuff. And you know, could it be brought to a bigger scale of competitive Splatoon? I don't know. I'm not the smart person for that, but in a controlled environment like the CCA, where they have access to all this data and consistent teams playing, they're able to do a whole lot of cool stuff with the stats. And I was genuinely blown away with what we saw with that. So there you go. If you want to know more, they also had a podcast that takes place live on the CCA Twitch, and I believe also their Discord on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So there you go. Shout outs to the CCA. Shout outs to the CCA. Where is Magic? There is Magic. Now here's the real question here. Can I hit this button and scare all the production folks within IPL? Because they have no idea how horrible this could be. It works! Yo! Magic, you can't see me, but we all see you. So that's all that matters there. So joining us live, welcome into the Popcast for a record-tying 5th time. One of the founders of CCA, the head TO for Genesis and LTC, and, of course, a Purdue graduate who's probably not too thrilled that Indiana is undefeated in football right now. The Magic8Ball. How's morale today?
Could be better. Could be better. Work was a little bit stressful. We could get it. We could have a brief side tangent about that if you'd like, because we haven't talked in a while, honestly.
We haven't. Did you just get back from work? Are you like running for office or something? What is it?
No.
What is going on here?
No, this is corporate Magic, who's angry because people aren't paying their bills, or people have. It's a long story. I work in a hotel now. Isn't that crazy?
Well, you got to get that cheddar somehow.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Because Esports isn't gonna do it.
That's for sure.
But no, I mean, other than that, I'm a little bit hangry. So not only are we gonna get corporate Magic, you're gonna get hangry corporate Magic, and I don't think you understand that it's like. I felt like light Yagami on Saturday night after you told me that I'd be on the podcast. I was writing it down. I'm a little bit better today, I think. But yeah, that's where I was at. We'll see if it comes through today.
There's a lot of times where, especially on more of the heavier topics that I do on a show like this, where on like Saturday or Sunday, like, oh, I'm just gonna rip it apart, and then Monday comes along and I'm like, wait, let me bring this back down to earth. Like, I gotta present myself to people. Now this is when I went over to IPL off of my channel. One of the things I said was, I want this to be the same thing. I don't want it to be like, oh, because this is IPL, it's got to be a different show. It's got to be more. Yeah, I mean, like, it's not like this is unprofessional or anything, but I don't want this to be a censored kind of thing. But we'll still see what the we'll test that today. I'm assuming.
Is today the first day?
It is, yeah.
Wow, yeah. That's even funnier. Well, and you'll see why later. But that's pretty funny.
Is this your first public appearance? Not that you've been in hiding, but like have you been on like any other show since LTC? Or done like any stream yourself or anything like that?
I've done a couple of streams. I've done a couple of game dev streams. I think I got asked to go on someone's YouTube for a thing, but I didn't take it. That's right. Yeah. No, I've just been, I don't want to say in hiding, but things have just been busy and then hectic. And also I just have not been as engaged, honestly.
Well, I just want to start with this. Since you were one of the head TOs for LTC, it did produce maybe one of the best moments of the entire year. How did that event as a whole go from your perspective?
I think it's going to be one of the best events in Splatoon's history, and I'm not even joking. I know Riptide was bigger, and I know it had all the bells and whistles, it had everyone, but something about the way that those moments played out, the energy in the room, and like the way that we caught it all on stream, like just the crazy stuff that happened, as well as like it being such like a turning point, especially for Moonlight as a team, and for just like the whole feeling of the event, right? Like we were so much louder than Smash, and that was to me, that's such a critical turning point in my mind. Is like, yeah, we're able to stand on our own legs now.
Well,
And so that's the vibe it had for me.
you talk about the volume, and obviously it was loud at Riptide as well, but it's the headsets that me and Falco are wearing in grand finals. Those are the same headsets that have been in circulation since probably Splatoon 1. So like you
Yeah.
know how much outside noise those microphones pick up because you've used those same microphones a lot too, but it still doesn't convey to the audience like how really loud it was in there. Like you can still obviously hear the crowd, and it's I still get goosebumps when they're counting down that final set before Moonlight wins. But like it sounds so weird when the commentator's like, man, it's so loud in here, and they're just like, yeah, it's loud, but we hear you still. But you don't understand, me and Falco can barely hear each other. It was very
Yeah.
raucous in there.
And I can't even imagine what it was like to be on the mic at that point. That must have been like electrifying, like literally, just because of the energy coming in. But no, that's LTC is such an interesting look back now, just because of the way that some things have played out behind the scenes, which is I won't get into too much, but it's definitely we're gonna be missing that tournament for sure.
Well, I mean, there's maybe we'll have time on the back end to get on that because there are some things like Genesis announced that they're not going to have Splatoon again.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, obviously, Big House has announced their thing in the past. There's MomoCon. There's that what that random con that kind of announced like, hey, we're looking for TOs. That's another like
Oh God.
bizarre thing going on with that.
Yeah, if
Um,
we have time on the back end, I'm down to actually get into that.
there's a lot of interesting stuff with that. But regardless, so on October 25th, you posted this, and post is the correct term, not tweet. You posted this. I agree for what Splatoon esports could have been. So many opportunities lost, too many rancid individuals
I yeah.
poisoning the well, a lack of genuine care from all angles. Looking back, it makes sense why Nintendo laid down those laws and shut the momentum down before it got too big to handle. What sparked that post?
I honestly don't know. I think it was just a moment of me thinking back on some stuff and just realizing like yeah, like the feeling that I was having is grief, right? And to me that was like that was worth talking about, right? And so that's what kind of sparked it. I never meant it to be like this crazy like discussion. I honestly didn't think it would be like that crazy of a statement, but I mean, now we're here. Um, but no, it was just me kind of just letting out some of those emotions, thinking about how the past couple of years have transpired, and just feeling that being able to sit with that feeling, I think was why I posted that.
Why was LTC the last event for you? Like what made it that LTC after that just was like, okay, I'm getting off Twitter. I'm just going to Blue Sky. I'm not going to be participating in anything Splatoon wise. Like, what was the turning point there, or the breaking point?
I think it wasn't any like specific breaking point, I don't think, but just a number of just poor experiences that I had personally leading up to that point, and then it getting worse after after May, because like I can't even thinking about the past year, all of the stuff that Splatoon has gone through is mind-boggling. Just and the stuff that I've gone through because of Splatoon is mind-boggling. I don't think I've talked about a lot of it publicly, but there was just so many individual instances where I was just like, wow, all right, another time that I'm engaging with people and it's just leaving me feeling like I don't want to engage with people anymore. Uh, and it finally just after Genesis, I was like, yeah, this is great. It was so much fun, and I still enjoyed doing it. But there was also the factor of me wanting to try and like not move forward with my life, but kind of try and step back a little bit and see where it takes me, see if I can't get other things on track, right? Because I'm gonna be honest, my financial situation when I was like heavily involved and when I was working at that place in Philly was not the best. Especially, I think I've talked about this a little bit, but I mean, Nerd Street just they stopped paying me. They stopped paying me on time. They were delaying payments. It was a really bad situation. It was going on for months, and I had to find a way out of there. I wasn't feeling great physically. Like I hadn't been exercising consistently. I hadn't been taking care of myself, uh, and not like in like a bad way, but in like a oh I know I could be better kind of way.
Well, if you're not getting paid, that typically leads to, yeah, I'm kind of stressed out.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
understandable. Yeah.
Um, and so that on top of everything else, and then I decided to get back on dating apps and everything, and luckily found someone who was a very good match, and we're still dating to this point. Um, and so all of those things kind of spiraled, and so instead of just taking things as they are, I decided to take a web dev boot camp while working full time, and that left such little time for Splatoon that it started to sort of phase it out of my life. And then after that, it just kind of fell on the back burner as these other things were being more important. And then I left localhost in February, right around the time that I went to Genesis. And after that, I just kind of decided, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm just gonna focus on other things and just finish out LTC, and then just try and do something different, right? I don't know. There there's a lot that we could talk about in relation to that, and I don't want to sit here ranting about it for 50 minutes.
Well, fair enough. So when I reached out to, or I guess you reached out to me after I kind of commented on your post, you sent me a list of things that you wanted to talk about, and I was like, "Ooh, these are all really good." So let's start working through that list then. The first one being, you brought up the fact you're obviously on Blue Sky. You're not on Twitter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What do you get the sense of, just based off of that, just based off where you choose to kind of look around, what the Splatoon community is all about right now?
I am in two places right now in relation to my contact with Splatoon, kind of three, right? But I don't consider CCA. I also want to talk about that for just a quick second. Thank
Sure.
you, first of all, for talking about CCA. They're the only tournament that's actually doing proper stats. They're the only tournament that's doing stuff like a press release to a podcast, because that's what that is. And I don't think that they're thinking about that in terms of that, but they're literally doing press releases. And
So
their level of production so good. Anyways,
let me kind of like, so I was just gonna do, I was not gonna do an episode one day or whatever, and then they always send me the press. I guess they are press releases, and then I just thought like, hey, I got nothing to do. Could like DRF or Mizuno just come on? I'll just talk to them. So I talked to DRF, and DRF says like, oh, we got like 6 gazillion teams, and we're doing like all this cool stuff, and we got all these like stats, and we got sponsors, and I'm like, the F, like what's going, like what,
yeah.
this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, why are we not talking about this more? So yeah, that's where that came from, at least from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. And to me, and we're gonna get into this, they're literally the paradigm right now for any good Splatoon tournaments. They are the paradigm. They're making content outside of it, which now IPL seems to want to be doing more of, which is good. But they're doing content surrounding the event. They're doing sponsorships. They're like they've got all these ducks in a row that people should be looking at and saying, "Wow, this is impressive." And like the other thing too is that their stream overlays are so good. Like they make so many interesting and engaging stream overlays that aren't just the bread and butter team overviews with the roster names, right? Like they've got information. They've got like what these teams did during the last thing, right? And especially during the championship stuff and the playoffs, they go all out on that front, right? And that's what makes them different. That's what makes them so much better. And it's these little things that people can do. It's not even like changing the entire screen and what pops up. It's literally just adding some text, putting it on a different overlay, and putting that in when the team comes up. It's not that hard. And this is going to be the thesis of what I'm discussing throughout this entire thing. Because I have a giant notepad in front of me with notes. That's the thesis. Is that there is so much improvement that can happen that is not happening, and I am struggling to find out why.
So Blue Sky is like the other thing. That's the main where you're getting the information from.
Mm-hmm. And one Discord server, which has a lot of the people that are kind of like the TO commentator crowd. It's kind of like a long story, but those are the only 2 points that I'm getting information from. Those are the only 2 points that I'm getting information from. I have no idea what's going on in the 20XX league. I barely knew it was a thing until K-Bot was like, "Hey, do you want to like watch this with me for a second?" And I was like, "Sure." What is this? I have no information. I have no idea what's going on. It is so hard for me to want to even get back into the scene, to get back into commentary, because I have no idea what's been going on. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm assuming you're kind of approaching it from the standpoint of I'm a casual. How would I know what's going on? Like, where would I go to find that? Is that like fair? The kind of approach you're kind of taking that as?
No, I'm taking it as someone who is tangential. I shouldn't have to go digging.
Tangential.
And this is something that's so critical. And I've got a perfect example right here. Do you know what I do know? I know that T1 is in finals of League Worlds. I don't watch it. I don't talk with anyone. I talk with literally like 4 or 5 people who are even like somewhat interested in League of Legends. That's it. And through talking with those 4 or 5 people, I know that T1 is in the finals of Worlds. They're going up against, I honestly don't know who the other team is, but I at least know that T1 with Faker and Kyria is in the finals of Worlds, and that is going to be happening at this weekend. You know what I mean?
Well,
the fact that I'm like that far removed from both of these things, and that I know more about one thing without trying to go looking for it, is just so much more telling.
Well, I think part of the story with that is, I mean, you're talking about a world event. You might not be recognizing, but that would be what I assume is the Super Bowl for League. Whereas what would be the Super Bowl for Splatoon, it would be the Overlord World Championship that happened earlier this year that Jackpot won. Like, I'm assuming you were at least aware of that, even if you weren't following it like directly.
Yeah, I was, and I heard about the fallout. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, that's you couldn't honestly, miss that. You could not have missed that.
That's what I do get, is I know so much more about the crazy like personal situations and the drama stuff. That's basically all I'm getting.
So
that's most of it.
So online tournaments then, even if you haven't been paying directly to like weeklies and stuff like that, which, you know, I do a weekly podcast. I don't even pay attention to weeklies. You know, I've got a kid, I got a job, I got other responsibilities. I'll check a box score. You know, like if I had a newspaper of competitive Splatoon, I would read through it just to skim. But like, what are your thoughts on online tournaments right now?
This is an entirely separate point that I have, and it is online Splatoon tournaments are just not good right now.
Fair. Are we?
That's it. Set, done. Yeah, no.
Well, let's expand on that. Are you talking about like weeklies in general, or like just the lack of top events?
Any and all.
like a league or stuff like that?
Again, the only metrically good tournament right now is like low ink, which is a given, and then CCA. I think that those are the only two like solid tournaments right now, and that's because low ink has you. I'm gonna be honest. Um, 1 day tournaments should have been phased out mostly moved away from a long time ago. Our proximity to Smash and the general lack of proper experience and time spent on tournaments means that it's been the go-to for so long, but in almost every other community I've been, they've got circuits, they've got leagues, and then their weeklies that are just thrown out there. They're not even the focus, right? It creates a much healthier playing dynamic because it's easier for teams to commit to. It promotes long-term teams and it allows for much better production. And we're seeing that with the CCA. It's a perfect example here that they've been able to develop these ways of engaging their audience over such a long time because they've been doing leagues for so long that they're able to sort of start developing this, right? And yeah, it's because DRF and the people involved in that have experience outside of Splatoon esports that they're like, oh, wait a minute, we should be taking this from this esport, this from that esport, and like seeing what works for us. And because they've been doing that over time, now they've got this amazing product.
When you talk about Smash events, though, are you talking about online or mostly LAN?
I mean, I think even online Smash tournaments are 1 day events at this point, right? I mean, think about the coin box, right?
Yes, I haven't been following online Smash, but so Coinbox is still a thing. I'm assuming it got like changed up a little bit
Yeah.
after the overlords kind of stepped in, but it is still a thing. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's like still I'm pretty sure it's still a thing. I honestly have not been paying too much attention to Smash either, but that's fair, right?
Well, so the reason I kind of set that question up like that is because I just kind of wonder a lot of what we think about, or at least a Smash normie like myself would think about. I think about the LANs. I traditionally think about the majors because that's what draws in my eyeballs. But I know there's a lot of locals. I know it's a lot easier to do a Smash LAN just because I could do one at this computer right here, right now. But like how much we see a lot of locals pop up, and it would take me a long time to list them all out. The one just popped up in the Twin Cities, obviously at Booyah Bay. I don't know if you saw the pictures of Booyah Bay. There were a lot of people at that event. Squid Battles, Seattle's popping off, Phoenix is popping off. Obviously New York Gatorland took place this last weekend, but our community is mostly online, and so I feel like, is that like a hindrance to us, or do we need to get to a point to where the focus has to be these in-person things, which are a lot more difficult to pull off, obviously?
I think that there's a lot of facets to this, and I want to go over all of it because I think this is an important set of discussions to have. Alongside CCA, I think that the only other thing that's thriving right now is in-person events.
Oh,
Right?
yeah,
And I think
thriving,
you'd agree with
yeah.
that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
they are. They're thriving so much, even though they literally got stopped in their tracks for 2 whole years and had to build themselves back up from the ground. And online events have had years to try and make things work. And all of a sudden, we're seeing LANs are starting to pop off so much more now. Like, it doesn't make sense that it should be this way, right? The online structure was solid for so long, and now all of a sudden it's just fallen to the wayside in favor of offline events. And I think that it really comes down to the people running it are that much more engaged in making it better for the people there. I also think like it's it's a matter of, again, going back to the structure. Offline events are meant to be one-off events, right? They're meant to be like, we're going to take this day and we're going to go for this, right? but you still need to have that online structure. But when the online structure is essentially the same thing as the offline structure, then it starts to combat with each other, right? This could be a very supplemental relationship where you have your main team, right? You have exactly who you're focused on here. You're practicing consistently. You've got a league going, and then you have your offline events that are like maybe you can try and like win it if you think that you're good enough and make a tiny bit of money and you know have a lot of fun doing it. It could be that way, but right now what we're seeing is that only the lands are really succeeding in making these events meaningful and special. And there's a lot that we can talk about that. And I think that the key thing right here is that it's a lot easier to put faces to names and make engaging production when you're looking at people on the screen, as well as when people are a lot more engaged and invigorated in the people around it, right? This is always what made lands, the major lands, so much better to work with in the first place, is because the commentators could talk to people who are there. They know them. They know who they're talking about. They know the tournament run that they've had, and then be able to put that back into the commentary and make it a much better experience. And then you're looking at those people, and then those people are looking at those people. You know what I mean? It makes it feel a lot more intimate, I think is the right way to put it, because it's a matter of caring. And this is the key word that I'm gonna be spewing again and again, is that it's a lot easier to care when there's good production. And honestly, it's a lot easier to do a good production in person.
And you know the amount of times we've been told fix this before you and your entire organization get in trouble at a LAN versus online has been very dramatic. It's been zero. Yeah, people are a lot nicer in person, it turns out. Apologies to Pika Dave in chat. I didn't mention the Houston LAN. Okay, that's why I said there's so many. That's kind of a good thing that we're forgetting to mention some, because there's so many good ones going on. I do want to back up a little bit before moving forward. You listed off a couple of tournaments that you think are doing things well, the CCA and obviously Low Ink. I think where some other people, I haven't seen anybody in chats, but I think some other people listening to this will say, well, what do you think about Ludi?
Why should I care about Ludi?
600 teams.
Okay. Why should I care about those 600 teams?
Because it's a sign that all these teams are playing in one specific event. It's being streamed a whole lot more because of Falco. By the way, Falco has been working together to stream a Splatoon tourney in general, streaming a lot of these locals as well. Like, I feel like the production value, because of some of these outside sources, have increased the value of a league like Ludi. But I guess what you're saying is you don't really care.
Falco is probably the only person that I would trust with an online tournament at this point, other than CCA. Flat out.
Well, like, he cares.
The only person.
I mean, to your point, he really
Falco
cares.
cares a lot. Falco cares so much about actually putting on a good product, about putting webcams on the screen. I need to go into this. Why is every Splatoon broadcast the same thing? It's the same thing. And IPL is so guilty of this.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between Proving Ground stream and an SOS stream?
What is the difference? We play Super Nintendo music in between the games, not
that
Splatoon
should be
music.
The lowest of low bars. That's the lowest of low bars. People should have webcams at minimum. Like, when I got into Valorant commentary back in like 2022, when I was working part-time at localhost, and they were like, yeah, no, like it's standard for you to be on webcam, even though it was a grassroots tournament that like no one even knew or cared about, and it was like just a pet project for some people who were just trying to put something together for their portfolio. It was a bare minimum for them to put webcams on the screen and to have interesting overlays. It's like we are so far behind. It's crazy. It is actually crazy. the other thing is that we have so many examples at this point of how to do it better, of how to do it so much better. Pre-made content like there was on Ink TV, right? Just roll the trailer. Just roll a trailer. Like cut up just a little bit of footage, put a name when their highlights are playing, have a little bit of voiceover. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to put something like that on the stream. Or if you're a weekly, make something fun and engaging, like a bit with a commentator, right? Just like a little sketch video with a commentator. K-Bot has done it when he was doing the Omega Strikers League. Like, it was just a funny little thing with a common player and him going back and forth for a little bit. Like, these are simple things that we could do, and that would just spice up the stream just enough to actually get people talking, right? That's the difference. And again, it's not like people don't know this. I know that I've been talking about this for so long at this point. And yeah, it's a little bit like difficult to coordinate, but if you're organizing something, you should have the skills to manage all of this, right? Because if you don't, then why are you managing a tournament?
You got some passion there. I think
do.
I think you like Splatoon. I think you like it just a little bit, or at least have some heart into it.
It's got a little like a giant like house in where my heart should be. Like, but seriously, like every single stream is static screen, team overview, gameplay. That's it. It's those 3 screens.
Yep.
And it's the same thing every time. And like the "we'll be back soon" screen is oftentimes just the same background with different text. It's so lazy. And I'm not afraid to say that. It's lazy because they're just trying to get this thing out, to get this thing through. Right? Yes. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not. You're on to that. I mean, I don't have any defense for it, but you're definitely right. We're guilty of doing that with all of our IPL events. That's not to say there's not people behind the scenes that don't care, but I think it's like, oh, well, this could be something that we add in to things. What's up?
We're gonna skip a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. What you got?
If people actually cared, they would do it.
Okay, so expand on that a little bit.
If people actually cared, they would do it. Also, I do want to say, I want to. A comment to chat said, "Have you seen the FTIU overlay?" I'm sure that FTIU and LSL have better overlays, right? But
well, you know who's behind at least the LSL one. I don't know.
It's Jub.
It's Jub.
And Jub is so awesome at doing overlays, and like could be helping make a ton of streams better. Like, and that's the other thing too, is that there are so many people in this community that if they were just given the resources, the time, and the platform to actually make things that are awesome, they could do it. We actually have so many people who are capable of doing that.
There are a lot of people that, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned Jub, because they're obviously very talented with what they do. But I also know they're very busy with stuff that they do IRL as well.
Yes, and this goes back to my point. If people are going to complain about the way that things are right now, but they have things like jobs, like Vincent said, they have other hobbies that they care about more, then you don't care enough to make that change, to make that difference. And that's okay. And that is okay. Like, again, I want to be very clear here, and I didn't say this at the beginning. This is me just being 100% honest, and this is all my opinion. This is not like a factual, right? Like, I think when I've tried to come on here in the past, I've tried to talk like straight facts. Like, I'm gonna be clear. We're gonna do this. Like, it's gonna be not like factual, but it's gonna be based in actual things that people could be doing, right? Or based in like common understandings. Like, no, these are my takes. This is my opinion on things. And if you don't agree with it, that's fine. But I'm just going to be 100% right here.
Yeah.
If you don't care enough about this thing to make a difference, then you don't care about it. I feel like that's not a bad thing to say.
Well,
It's just the truth. It's just the truth that you don't have enough of you to go around to care about this thing, and so you can't.
well, let me push back on that narrative just a little bit, because something that's been a common theme that we've been talking about here on the podcast is avoiding burnout, avoiding getting to the point to where I'm putting a lot of myself into this. With anything you do, well, whatever you put into it's what you get out of it. Yeah, I get that. But if you're putting so much into it to where you're burning yourself out, and I've said this many times, there's no point in doing it. Like you're not. There's no point in selling your soul to something with how short our lifespans are if you're not getting that kind of thing in return. So I wonder if that's kind of the hesitation with some people. I wouldn't say it's not them caring. It's maybe they're kind of worried that caring too much could have negative side effects to it.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I I I'm of the idea that people should be compensated for what they're doing, and that people need to start thinking about that before the next wave of people get fed up and leave, which is already happening.
Right.
And I'm not saying that the last 4 years of my life are a waste, but I really don't have much else to show for it other than pictures and stories, and communities can't subsist off of the equivalent of corporate pizza parties, right? I mean, that's what it is.
Please don't unionize.
But
that's fair enough. That's
the combat to that, like the there are two sides to this, right? Two things can be true. It can be true that people shouldn't be burning themselves out for something that they're not going to get paid for. But at the same time, how do you get something to the point as a group where you can be able to subsist, right? And I think I want to go back to an earlier point, is that more people need to start actually going for those avenues that are going to make them money. And this is kind of why I talk about Splatoon Esports, right? Because the esports side doesn't exist. The content, the grander tournaments, right? That side of things doesn't exist in a way that is going to help.
I think you're right with the content thing, and that's something I wish IPL was more a part of. I wish we would like cut out half of our tournaments and just become let's just do shows like this all the time. Somebody else, yes. Not me all the time. I completely forgot the thing that I was going to bring up. So maybe I should just move on to the next topic then. Maybe I'll think of it in a second.
I think the main thing that I want to say here is, right, like, if you are concerned about like, oh, well, I have my job, I can't spend that much time, I'm not getting that much in return, then why are we not looking for ways to get that return? Like, that's my main point here. Again, if you cared, it would happen. CCA has sponsors right now. They have a new sponsor that they went out and looked for, and they got an answer, and they went back and return. And it's just, there's no ambition to do that, right? Like people don't, they either think that it's not worth it, or they think that they don't care, or they think like it, why should we be doing this, like from a moral ethical standpoint? But it's like, you can't survive if you're not going towards these avenues, and that's the be all end all. You're not going to not burn out if you don't have that.
I remember what I was going to say. You said the word esport. What does that word mean to you in relations to Splatoon?
It doesn't mean anything because it's not there. What Splatoon esports would be is an ecosystem, is a financial ecosystem where we are able to subsist in the grander world, right? is we would be able to have these sponsors coming in, to have a lot of content that is doing well and is giving money to creators. We have tournaments that are providing good ad revenue for the tournament organizers. That's what esports is. It is the commodification of competitive gaming.
Well, let me ask you this because you would know the answer to this way more than I do. I don't pay attention to anything outside of the bubble of Splatoon that I'm in. When people think of the word esports today, they think of, oh, how like it's injecting money into my video game and it's changing it from something I do as a hobby to something that I have to do as like a career. And I think people look at how there's been a decline in some games, like some markets there, and they start to think, well, I wouldn't want to be a part of that. Is there any truth to that kind of narrative, to where like the esport market isn't really reaching up to the heights that maybe we thought it was potentially going to be at 2 or 3 years ago?
Oh, 1000%. I mean, like the story that I told earlier where I was getting late payments is a perfect example. Like they just did not have enough money coming in. And I
Then
think that it's starting to recover now a little bit, but it's not doing great right now. And I completely get that side of things, right? But I still think that if people wanted to, we should have been trying.
Well, I just wonder with that kind of narrative if there's maybe people who, when they hear the word Splatoon and esport, then maybe they kind of like push, like, no, I don't want us to become that. I don't want us to like become this more, maybe not corporate Splatoon, but more like just more financially surrounding the community kind of thing.
Right, because it adds stress. I mean, it adds that kind of responsibility and obligation that I think that people don't want with Splatoon, which again goes back to my point of, all right, then people don't actually care that much, right? Because if they don't want the responsibility and the obligation of taking care of a community, then they don't care enough about that community to try and support it financially. Like, you see what I'm saying? It's just a matter of a general mindset that, and I agree, a lot of Splatoon players have this mindset of like, well, why would we do this, right? Why would we even like give esports a second thought? Like those communities are awful. They're struggling. But as someone who worked in an esports center for a long time, 2 years, the culture in there was not bad at all. And I think that it gets a bad rap of like it has to be this crazy high octane, like we're gonna be super stressed about money. Like, yeah, did it end poorly? Sure. That's 50% of businesses in the United States. I'm not gonna hold that against esports in general.
How much of a factor, and you kind of mentioned this in your post, the overlords implementing the community guidelines. Obviously, on the online side of things, we've realized that those things don't mean anything. Like we've had people tell us like, hey, don't worry about that. Like we don't care. And like in Europe, I've heard the rumor was, don't even apply because you're just giving us more work to do. Like we really don't care. Just don't get sponsored by Pornhub. You're gonna be okay. But in my mind, even though like we don't really care anymore, could it fair to say that the guidelines could still limit the growth if we were to get up to the point that you're trying to talk about?
Oh, 100%. That's why they're there in the first place,
Were
right?
they
Is
there
they
for Smash specifically?
I think that they saw I think it was in response to a couple of very specific situations rather than esports as a whole. Right? It was there because of what happened to Panda. It was there because of the coin box. And it was there because of there's some other situation where a tournament was pulling some stuff with like it was there because of Super Smash Con, right? Because they had the name branding. I think it's those
Yeah.
three things that really like struck a chord with Nintendo that spurred this on, rather than like the idea of the community and esports as a whole. Now, did it help in any way? Not at all. And it is going to cause a lot of red tape in the future. But yeah, I think it's not it is luckily not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was a factor in me quitting, that's for sure. Just because like the fact of the matter is like I I was just done at that point. Like that was just like another nail in the coffin. But it's not as bad as I thought it would be. And that's a very good thing. And it's the relationship is starting to go back to that, if you don't bother us, we won't bother you. But now it's kind of like there's a clear cut way so that you're not bothering us.
If you're just now joining us and wondering who this spiffy person is, it is Magic8Ball. And we've covered a lot of good stuff already, but I want to be respectful of time, so I'm going to keep moving down the list here. You said Low Inc is, quote, the greatest tournament to ever exist in any esport ever. But you
Often
sent
that
me
is not
some
on my
stuff. You
notes.
sent me a pretty good take about Low Inc, and I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Low ink and low level is genuinely destroying the chances of top level play to have the notoriety it deserves.
Is that because Low Inc is well? Here's the narrative that I've always said. I've
Mm-hmm.
said this a lot on the show. Low Inc is the number one tournament in the community. I don't think that's even up for debate. I mean, the
Yes.
leagues coming in do a fantastic job, but on a month to month basis, Low Inc reigns supreme, unchecked. I've acknowledged that, and I've also acknowledged how that is not a good thing for the scene as a whole. Your low level tournament should not be the most popular thing, the most talked about thing in a community. Now, this is where I want to ask you if this is a fair take I've had or not. I've always said
Okay.
we are not slowing down Low Inc. We're only going to make the monster even better. And the point being is, I want somebody else to overtake us, but I'm not going to slow down and let you catch up. I want you to surpass us on your own. Is that a fair kind of philosophy to take with Low Inc?
I think that part of me is saying yes, part of me is saying no. The part of me that's saying yes is like, yeah, if you're not passionate about the other side of things, like this is you're one of the people who really made Low Inc what it is today. This is your tournament for a long time. The podcast is was grown out of Low Inc and out of the necessity for one. And so yeah, it makes sense that you shouldn't be the person responsible for putting resources where they need to go. But someone has to. And if the resources are going towards this podcast being on the most watched Splatoon competitive Splatoon channel on Twitch, and it's going towards low level, like how do you think that that makes the top players feel?
Well, that's the podcast definitely started out as a low level thing, but it's grown to more open environment. Do I cater? Do I are my most watch episodes Low Inc related? Oh yes, I could show you the stat sheets on my own channel. Like if I put Low Inc in the title and I talk about it, especially with the pre-show, the top tens that we do, those things get the most views.
Mm-hmm.
But what also got a lot of views was when I spent a lot of time talking about Ink TV. When I talked about the 20XX finals, when I talk about 20XX when it was like an actual major, when I talked about
Mm-hmm.
Super Jump, when there's something the community rallies around or is genuinely interested in, they'll tune in and listen. The thing is, Low Inc is that monthly thing that they will tune in and listen. And to be quite honest with you, if Low Inc didn't exist, there wouldn't be much of a reason for the podcast to exist. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
talk about I'll talk about the controversy of the day or like just like general thoughts on like whatever it is, but then it's like, okay, well, what am I going to talk about this week? And Squid Junction, I can't do 30 minutes talking about Squid Junction or something like that. So
I it I think that the main issue is that you're right, there isn't a competitor. There isn't someone who's doing the same thing and is specifically focusing on the high level, like that needs to exist. K-Bot used to do the podcast with
Uh,
Matt
yeah,
Ninja.
talk speed up.
Yeah, and that was great. That was really important, honestly. And it's unfortunate that it really didn't take off, and that K-Bot got busy. Um, but and this is kind of what I was going back to earlier. Content is king. Content will get people to care. Content will get money flowing. I promise that if 3 or more char level creators focused on were focused on our scene, Splatoon would be very, very different. I think that that's legitimately all it would take.
Well,
right?
If you were to pay attention to the tournaments that took place last weekend, SAC, Proving Grounds, Falco's Splatoon tourney streamed, one of the locals going on. There's like 10 million others. The most watched tournament was Kyo's Glaze Gauntlet. And the production for that, I think Kyo just literally streamed Jared's point of view, and that's it. Like, but that was the most watched one by far. Like, it blew everything else out of the water.
You know what we need to do? Unironically, it's not even in my notes. What we need to do is we need to go to Kyo and say, Kyo, we need to put a production team together for these tournaments. And like we could make this the best tournament on the market right now. It would be awesome. We could do it every month. Like, we could host it on your channel. You literally don't even have to worry about it. We will take it over for you, and we will make it the best possible thing for this community. And again, that's not a hard step to take. And I think that Kyo would honestly be pretty receptive to it, probably. I would imagine, right? I mean, he's just going to get free views every month and be the owner of this tournament. I feel like that's a pretty good deal. But my point is, like, we can do this. We can take that step and just go, like, hey, let's make this something, right? Like, what if we went to Kyo and we said, dude, what if we did like that Ink TV stuff with this? All of a sudden, you like, that starts a whole other conversation. And yes, there's a lot of logistics and planning and everything that goes into that. But if we're talking about one of the most popular Splatoon players right now, who's like deeply ingrained with that high level community, all of a sudden you've got a perfect storm. You've got good content, you've got the stage, and you've got the audience. This is something that Raze talks about a little bit. And I didn't think I'd talk about Raze on this podcast, but he talks about how you need 3 things. You need the stage, you need the audience, and you need the actors. And that's the most important thing, right? And obviously people need to understand the interplay between them all, and that's what content does. Content is the glue that puts it all together. I'm
Ray's
so glad
making an appearance in chat. Hey, Ray's has a stake in this podcast now. It's on
suppose he
IPL.
does, huh?
Yeah.
But point being, like, Kyo has the players, Kyo has the stage, Kyo has the audience. It just needs the glue, and it could be so good. It could be so good. I hope that the right people end up talking to him about it. But again, it's that kind of like, he might push back because it's kind of that esports mentality, right? It's kind of that like, oh, we're trying to like turn this into something other than like, oh, just some dudes hanging out playing Splatoon. We're trying to turn it into this professional thing. And this is, I think, I'm kind of going to go down to my point about being like other esports. I don't think we should be like other esports, but I think we need to just stop thinking that where we're at right now is the only place that we'll get to. Right? It is the only place that is okay to be at. Other esports, like I'm saying earlier, they're not bad. Like, yeah, of course there's stuff all the time that's chaotic and everything. But I mean, at this point, we're basically as bad as the other esports communities with how much stuff has been going on. Like, it's not that far of distance here in terms, like we're with the other esports now. We're cool. We've got death threats. We've got toxic Twitter replies. We've got like gatekeeping. We've got racist top players. Like, I don't know. I think we're on the right track, even unintentionally. So I think that at this point, saying that being going down that road is going to create toxicity is completely missing the point here, and is actually genuinely harming the discussion because it's not true.
You kind of bring up that obviously the more difficult things that's been kind of going on this year. You mentioned the obvious. You hinted at the jackpot thing, and obviously the other kind of annoying things that have driven people away from the community this year, and have been genuinely frustrated. Like from behind the scenes as a TO, this has been by far the most frustrating year of Splatoon that I've ever been a part of. For IPL as well, but we keep plugging along. I feel like we got good leadership to kind of weather the storm for stuff like that. One thing that kind of just popped into our head recently, like within the last couple of months, was just like, wait a minute, we could just ban people. Like we could just kick people out. Like why haven't we done that? Like we've always thought like, okay, you need to break a guideline to be banned, and until you do that, you're. But it's like, wait, no.
We've banned players from LANs.
If you cross the line and you get personal with a TO, like that shouldn't be cool and that shouldn't be acceptable. So IPL's adopted a new policy of that, and the thing that with implementing that policy is making sure people know you can be critical of us. Like I will always defend a player's right to go on and say Low Ink is a horrible tournament because of whatever reason. I can disagree with them, but it's their right to go on and tell me those kinds of things. But what needs to be drawn the line is Low Ink sucks because Popgun is dog water. Like, come on, you can't be.
It's
like,
respect.
Yeah, exactly. And I think IPL's finally kind of realized, oh, wait a minute, we could just kick people out. And they go on Twitter, and this happened like a month ago. Somebody went on Twitter, I got kicked from this tournament because I was mean to this TO, and everybody dogpiled on that person. It's like, bro, here's examples of you being a turd muffin to this person. So like we all get it.
Oh my god, I didn't know about this.
Well, I mean, it's obviously not on Blue Sky because it's more wholesome because there's less people on it, but that was just kind of like the come to Jesus moment we had with IPL. It's like, okay, we need to just start putting our foot down, and it's kind of embarrassing, on myself included, that it took us this long to kind of come to that realization.
Yeah, honestly, it's. I wanna get back to that. I kind of want to circle back around to like the fact that other esports communities, they have done a lot right, and I think that this is one of the things is like they're pretty good about just like culling people, right? Like they're willing to have difficult conversations with people. They're willing to say like no, you can't do that and make enemies. And I think that that's the misconception that people have, is that like is that animosity within a community is a bad thing. Like not necessarily. Anger, I think, is an emotion that people feel for a good reason most of the time, right? It means that something needs to change. It means that you're not being heard. Is that there's a communication is not being had with you, and so that emotion wells up inside of you. But that's not a bad thing. It's just an emotion that people have, and so I think that creating these kind of frictioned relationships is something that Splatoon has had a lot of history with like not doing, and I think that it needs to be doing more of. If I'm being completely honest, is like we need to stop treating people like they can do whatever they want and that things are going to be okay in the end, because honestly it's not okay to run things that way. And so I like that IPL is going for that.
Well, I don't think it's just IPL. I think a lot of us had that kind of wake up call about, I mean, just that not maybe this is the direction things are going, but it's just more so like, why are we letting these handful of bad apples just just spoil this all. Like, this is a stupid video game where we paint each other with what I think is just blood from the Inklings. So like it's not that deep, and it's not worth all the nonsense that goes along with it. But I mean, that's not to say there aren't still jackasses around, but I would like to think that we're taking the right steps to start addressing that and make it like a just make the community a less jackassery kind of place.
Yeah, I no, I completely agree. Like, there are controversial people who are interwoven into the community who like need to be removed from their place, and it's not like it hasn't happened before. Everything from content creators to top players to tournament organizers to community members have to start holding other people accountable. And that's what accountability looks like, is those friction conversations, those difficult kind of stances that you don't really want to take, but you kind of have to if you want things to change, if you care enough for things to change.
Exactly. And I mean, kind of like you said, it doesn't just extend, it's not just on TOs to do that. Like, we can keep people out of our tournaments, but that doesn't mean they can't be like still floating around somewhere else. And I won't call specific people out, because I don't think that's fair. I think everybody's like starting to get into that right kind of mindset and start moving forward in that right thing. But yeah, it's definitely not a TO thing. And on the flip side, it's also not a TOs are up on a pedestal and every decision they make should be treated as like one of the 10 commandments. Like, TOs F up and they need to be called out for it. In a fair, critical way. I think that's where things get kind of lost, but it's also like it's a two-sided kind of thing. But I mean, I've talked about that several times before. I got one more thing, and if you got more things to add on top of it, please feel free to do so. You mentioned the fact that we're not taking competitive Splatoon seriously enough. Is that kind of like what you've been talking about already, or is there something more to expand on that? And does it come down to, when I'm commentating on Proving Grounds, I'm trying to talk about anything other than Splatoon when I'm actually commentating?
No, that's not what I mean.
Okay, good, because I like doing that.
What I mean is when people is that I think generally, and it again, this is kind of like the thesis of this entire thing, is that people don't take this scene seriously, like the people outside it and the people within it, right? The top players aren't expecting to see any fruits of their labors. They're like trying to go to Worlds maybe, but that's it. They're not invested beyond that. They're kind of just saying like, oh yeah, it's kind of just a thing that I do, right? TOs, they see it as a stepping stone most of the time, right? Like, they're kind of just there because like, oh, well, nobody's doing it. Like, I kind of stepped up and I'm doing this thing, but it's not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life, right? Like, it's not the end goal is to be here in this community. And I'm guilty of that, right? But if people are not being invested in improvements or having the ambition to take risks with their time or their status, that's what pushed me away. It hurts when people in my community aren't matching my energy to try and make change, to try and improve things, to try and at least create something more, and to care enough to make those changes rather than just sit on our laurels and accept things as they are. That's honestly one of the main things that pushed me away. Everyone talks. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't want to like set you up for like, I want you to give me the answer I'm looking for, but it seems like you're saying you value quality over quantity when it comes to things. Like, it doesn't matter how much of something you put out, as long as like it's more quality, more thought out, more care put into it.
I mean, I think that's generally what I believe, yeah, but I think that's slightly missing the point.
Okay. Well, the point I wanted to kind of tailor this to is something I've been talking about a lot recently on Blue Sky, is how we have 40 events going on each week. Like, literally, that's the thing. And it seems like tournaments are just kind of getting cranked out. But you're talking about putting care and effort into things. There's a lot of these new events that are I call mom and pop kind of terms. They're not attached to like a
Yeah.
big org or something like that, but it's somebody who's like, I see something that needs to be fixed, or I see a gap somewhere in the tournament program where I feel like I could fix something. If you were to like inspire one of those mom and pop tournaments, or somebody who wants to like create the next Ink TV league, like that, obviously that's like a big ambition, but something like that, what would your message be to somebody like that?
Get yourself organized. Like, get yourself to the point where you understand how to manage a project, and not just like, oh, well, I know how to run a bracket. No, I mean, like, you need to learn how to manage people. You need to learn how to manage deadlines and tasks and things of that nature. And I think that this is something that Mizuno does specifically very well, and it's almost certainly why the CCA is such a step above, is because she is a project manager. She says, these people need to be doing this thing at till this deadline. We're going to be having a meeting on this day. Like, she is the most organized person in the world, and it makes a world of difference. And that's why honestly, that's part of why I stepped back from the CCA, is because I realized, like, I'm not the person who was qualified to make that happen. I think that, honestly, I've been working on myself to get to the point where I could be, but at the end of the day, like, I knew I wasn't going to be the person that was going to put that to that next level, at least not right now. And so I let her just run with it, and they've done a great job, right? DRF, Dama, Kira, all of them have done such fantastic work. But if my message to everyone else is to learn how to get organized, learn how to work with people, and learn how to convince people to come work with you so that you can create awesome things, right? Get connected to people so that you can make an awesome project. There's, like I've said, there's so many people in this community who could do such an amazing thing. I ran through this a thought experiment in a server earlier. I was like, yeah, if I was to structure an organization, this is how I would do it. I'd have like a broadcast lead, I'd have a tech lead, I'd have an operations lead, and I would structure it in that way, specifically to give it that professional, organized feel, because that's what this scene needs. That's what this scene needs, is that organization, that we're going to structure things so that people can get things done, because that's not how things are being structured right now. And I think that my main message to anyone who's making tournaments right now is to give yourself the liberty to have that level of professionalism. And I think that that's one of the most important things that's missing.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover, or I didn't bring up, or anything like that? Because I want to give you this opportunity to get your passion out, and I think the people really enjoy listening. I'm enjoying listening to this, so I don't want to miss anything.
I think the only thing that I really haven't talked about is at length is that aspect of specifically with content, right? A lot of times I hear people talking about like learning resources. I just wish that someone would make this thing, et cetera, et cetera. Like, and the other thing too is that TOs often, like, so many TOs, and some of the TOs that I literally talk to on like almost a daily basis, just come up with all of these theoretical improvements and all of these wonderful ideas, and then nothing happens. Nothing happens. And these are people that are so creative and motivated and ambitious and skilled. And instead of just actually going out and doing the thing, they just toss around ideas for an hour, get into like a random like half argument discussion, and then leave. And that's it. And that's where it ends. When this could be so much more. This scene could be so much more if things just happened, right? I think that I really learned the the importance of this when I started trying to do game development is like, I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody knows what they're doing, first of all, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to try and fail. I'm going to try and I'm going to fail, and that is going to be okay. That's one prop where that I'll give Dapple, is that they are trying. They're trying to make the 20XX League a thing. I think that I have critiques, obviously, everyone does. And it's important for them to work through those and to actually improve on those things, and that's that second step. But the first step is to just say, all right, let's do the thing, instead of just not. Instead of just allowing it to be okay to not do things, right?
I'm glad you brought up 20XX, because I was literally going to say just that. You and we saw everything with the Ink TV League. And Spoon would always talk about, amongst many things, is I didn't know how to do any of this stuff, so I just taught myself how to do it, as far as like content creation and stuff as that. Was 20XX the successor to Ink TV? No, it didn't. But what I've said consistently, and I'll still stand by this, 20XX was a complete success in the sense that, like you said, they tried it and they attempted to put something out there, and the folks behind that one, Lit Blue and the rest of the Dapple crew, they're going to learn from that, and they're going to make the next league even better. And I'm excited about that. And in my mind, that makes it more successful than Ink TV, considering that Ink TV, it was great. And it was, I mean, it was phenomenal. And let's be honest, Ink TV lucked out at the time to where the teams themselves had great storylines. And that's, it's kind of difficult to create stuff like that now. But you're never going to have a Starburst taking their first L ever on live TV in front of 1,000 viewers. But the fact that Ink TV didn't come back, or a lot of the folks that were behind the scenes with that one just said, I'm out. Like, we did this. This was a lot of work. I need to move on to something else. In my mind, the fact that 20XX is learning and growing and going to try to do it again shows that A, they're crazy, but B, I think there's a lot of success to be put into that.
And that's what I did for 3 years, 4 years probably, if we're going that far. I didn't know you were at the first local that I ever ran. Yeah. Isn't that right? In Indiana.
Me, Allie, and somebody from the Ink Vaders. Yes.
Ranch.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And it was so funny. But I decided I'm going to take that step and I'm going to make collegiate Splatoon a thing. Mm-hmm. And I decided to keep going, and I recognized that the void that the CCA was, and I was like, all right, we're going to try this thing. And like the first few tournaments, like we barely got enough teams to like actually run a tournament without like alumni being involved, because that's how it was back then. Right. But because I was inexperienced. Then I did it again when I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go on TikTok. I'm going to see how competitive Splatoon content does on TikTok. And then like 4 people followed me, probably more. And I led that wave of getting people onto that platform and showing us to a larger audience. And I think that we're reaping the benefits of it now, quite honestly. I mean, unfortunately, there's one...
No, but remove the hands there. We couldn't quite hear. What'd you say?
Well, no, there's one person who unfortunately can't reap the rewards of that anymore because they're being... Anyways, but then after 2022, when there were no locals on the ground, period, I decided to start working towards that again. And I decided to put my foot forward and prove to people that you could do this if you just put your mind to it. And now we've got, 12, 13, probably more locals that are going on consistently and are succeeding and thriving. So I have time and time again proven that if you have a good idea and you see something and you recognize it and like you think like, oh, this could be good, just go and do it. just go and do it. Please just go and do it, because you're going to learn, you're going to prove to other people that they can do it, and then that momentum just keeps moving forward. And I think that the one project that I really desperately, honestly, just so much want to see is top level content, top level analysis content that is well done, that is sufficiently like actively like edited, that is like talked about by a person who's at least somewhat knowledgeable of the top level scene, right? Because those people exist. They have video editing experience. I know that these people can do this. I just need them to do it and to just put their all into it and do it consistently for at least a few months and see where it goes. Because the worst thing that happens is that you spent time and now you're a better video editor. You know what I mean? Just go and try and do things. And again, and this is where I'm probably gonna cap out unless you want me to make a call out post on live on chat. For a lot of people, Splatoon ends up being a hobby that they pick up, grow with, and then move on from, which is fair, but makes it really hard to build anything long term. That's where we're at right now, is that people struggle to see beyond 2-ish years in the future because they're thinking, I might not even be here then. What if that mindset changed in mass? What if that mindset shifted for everyone from top player to commentator to 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 just your average community member? What would that look like? Right? Because now we're thinking, and this is kind of the point that I wanted to make with low ink, right? Is now the low ink people who are looking 2 years into the future are thinking, well, when I stop playing low ink, I'm going to stop getting any kind of content being made about me. There's going to be no more buzz. There's going to be nothing to play for. Mm-hmm. Why would you engage with that, right? And this is kind of why we have a top level vacuum right now, is because for the past 4 years, we've been cutting people off at the legs as soon as they get past low ink level, because there's just nothing there for them. And so they stopped playing, and now it's barren at the top. And like, did we not see this coming?
Man,
I don't know.
You just brought up a whole nother topic that's just going to drag us on another extra hour. And it's like, okay, I'll leave it at that. That's a fair enough take to give. And I mean, man, there's a lot to dissect with that. I will ask you for one thing. Mm-hmm. If you have any kind of insight on this, Genesis not picking up Splatoon again for this year, do you have anything on that?
Okay, let's briefly go over the LAN stuff. And I don't know how much Siren wants me to say or not, and if she's here, then she can tell me, but it's fine. Genesis, when I left things off with Genesis, their message to me was basically, it's unlikely that it's coming back. Like a few months ago, all of a sudden, I think they DM'd one of the other people who were involved in level 1 about Splatoon, and like they were saying that like, oh, maybe if we got the stream numbers up, then like maybe we could see this coming back. I don't think that those discussions have gone anywhere since then. It is common for Splatoon to be announced later for Genesis, but at this point, I still don't think that those discussions have progressed, but I honestly am not that involved with this section of it, and so that's as much as I can give.
Why did Genesis pick up Splatoon last year after kind of leaving it after the pandemic?
We kind of like, I don't want to say swindled them, but we kind of like just convinced our way in. We persuaded them and said like, hey, this is a pretty cool thing. Like, we can probably get you enough entrants to go even, and then we didn't. And that's because we had one person who was part of the crew on Genesis who was definitely struggling to pull their weight because of issues that they were having and causing more issues beyond that. And I was going through my situation at the time and there was the last person was unmotivated to really go out and do things and didn't even really want to do Genesis in the first place, but was kind of like I I brought them along, and so we just had a really struggled to put Genesis together, if I'm being honest, and we could have done so much more to make that better, but I legitimately didn't care enough.
Magic, thank you for coming on to this. This was everything I was hoping it would be. I agree with a lot of what you said. I mean, there's obviously some things I push back on, but that's not the point. The point is having these kinds of conversations and having these different kind of takes and seeing things. I mean, sometimes we need someone to say like, "Hey, this tournament stream is just doing the same thing over and over again," and it's not like, "Oh yeah, that's kind of right." And I mean, there was there was a lot that went on with this, but I thank you for taking the time to come out on this. I know you don't do a lot with Splatoon nowadays, but it's obvious you still have a soft spot for the community. It's still obvious you want to see this thing thrive, and I think
I
that's cool.
do, right? It's the place where I really found my people in a time where I desperately needed it, and like I know how much it can do for people, and so I want to see it continue doing that for other people. And that's something that will never change.
Did you play Brush at chess at LTC?
I think we did.
Did you win?
I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure I won. Yeah.
Okay, so if I bring Brush on here and he says he wants, because that wasn't a confident, yeah, I won kind of thing.
Then we're running it back. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Uh, Thank you again for coming on. Looking
having
good,
me.
by the way. I can looking spiffy.
Right back at you, kid.
Well, I mean, I take care of myself, and also, can you believe I have a kid? Isn't that kind of
No, I
crazy?
can't. The
See,
isn't he almost like 1.5?
he was at yeah, almost 1.5. He was at Riptide. Um, he was kind of you missed him. He was kind of running around. At one point he almost unplugged Ray's laptop, and that probably would have been a bad thing, but that happened. Hey, enjoy the rest of your night. And
You as well.
I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Take care.
And that was Magic8Ball. That was good. That was really good. I'm glad that Magic was the first episode of this on the IPL's channel. Not all episodes of the podcast go an hour and a half, but I've gotten to situations like this where I was talking with Falco, where I was talking with Doughboy, and it's just like the more they talk, the more it's like, well, I want to ask about this, and he let off on the lack of things to do outside of low ink, and it's like, oh, well, I want to talk about his thoughts on the CCA or the SAC, and other things like that. But obviously, at some point, we got to shut this off, and it gives an excuse to bring him back on again in the future. So there you go. Welcome to IPL. And some really good takes right there. I'm really glad that the Magic came on for that. This could be it for today's episode of the podcast. I don't know how to raid anybody on this whole different setup that I got, so I'm not even going to try to break something down with that. But if you would like to be a part of the podcast in any way, feel free to reach out. My socials below: Twitter at Mr_Popgun, Blue Sky at Popgun, Discord at Popgun. Just go to Popgun. Yeah, Vincent, if you want to raid somebody, go right ahead. I'm not even going to look and see who's on there. But until then, get vaccinated, stay safe, wear a mask when applicable. Go out and vote. Early voting is going on in a lot of places. Early voting is going on right now in Indiana. The average wait time is like 2.5 hours. There's a lot of people voting. Make sure you vote too. Unless you live outside of the United States, then I don't know. Celebrate Halloween, I guess.